In this lesson, we're going to examine the group process that is known as groupthink. Refer to the third and fourth pages of your third study guide. And also there's some important information about this process in Chapter 5 in the textbook. On the third page of the third study guide, there is a working definition of groupthink. Looking at that definition, you might want to consider it as a form of tunnel vision. A group becomes so committed to a particular approach, a particular set of ideas, that it just ignores, overlooks, discards any notion that there are problems with the decisions being made. This is another listing beyond what you will find in the study guide of the so-called symptoms of groupthink. Become familiar with these and relate them, if you possibly can, to maybe experiences that you have had. Now, you may in particular want to focus on the idea that there's this notion that builds up in the group: we can't do anything wrong. Any particular problems or concerns are just kind of rationalized away. And there's a notion that we're doing the right thing. Plus, any outside viewpoints that contradict that of the group are just written off as being wrong. And anybody who dissents, basically, again, a lot of pressure is brought to bear on these individuals. They're supposed to really think about what you're saying. Are you really with us? Are you really committed? And then there's this overall notion that we're all in this together. And there are certain people who literally play the role of, and the guy who came up with this notion of groupthink was Janus, mind guards. Now, a mind guard is someone who's just looking for anyone who might be thinking about dissenting, not going along with the group. It's a little bit like if you've ever burned leaves and some of the embers get out away from the burning area and you start stomping them out with your feet. Well, that's exactly what a mind guard tends to do. Now, there are numerous illustrations and examples of groupthink. One in particular that comes to my mind is the Challenger space shuttle disaster that occurred in January of 1986. The engineers of Morton Thiokol, a subcontractor of the solid rocket booster O-rings affiliated with the shuttle and its launch structure, were very, very concerned because the morning of the launch, the temperature had dropped below 32 degrees Fahrenheit. The engineers knew that those cold temperatures could compromise the O-rings and make the launch quite dangerous. NASA, on the other hand, had fallen behind with respect to their launch schedule. They were in no mood for a delay. NASA officials began to put a lot of pressure on the higher-ups at Morton Thiokol to agree to the launch itself. Although the engineers were again insistent on the fact that the launch should be delayed, NASA officials called for a private meeting involving Morton Thiokol higher-ups along with the engineers and some of the top NASA officials. In that kind of isolated group situation, NASA won out and the decision was made to launch. The end result was the entire crew perished. Now, thinking that perhaps NASA had learned its lesson, many of you know again that in 2003 there was a second shuttle disaster involving the shuttle Columbia. Once again, NASA was aware of potential problems, but just like with the Challenger, had kind of written these off as quote, end quote, acceptable risk. Then in 2010, some of you might remember the Deepwater Horizon BP oil rig explosion. Again, a classic illustration, both directly and indirectly related to groupthink. Millions of dollars had been spent by BP in the production of this mobile offshore drilling unit. Just like NASA, BP was running behind schedule and under a lot of pressure to complete the project, despite reports of the fact that there were some leaks in the rig's blowout preventer. Even some of the workers were highlighting the fact, I think we've got a serious problem here. But the higher-ups, again, argued that the issue would be resolved if something were to go wrong. Prior to the explosion that you see highlighted here, workers provided pretty much ironclad evidence that there was a genuine problem with the blowout preventer, but no attempts were made to repair the problem. No decision was ever made to stop production. And actually, the superiors worked to keep any negative information about a problem under wraps. The end result was the rig blew, killing 11 people and injuring 17 more, creating the worst, or specifically the largest, spill in the history of the petroleum industry. Unfortunately, this was a direct result of a number of decisions reflecting time pressures, money issues, and a whole lot of people thinking exactly alike and with no clear-cut notion of what risks were involved. Some have even argued that the U.S. invasion of Iraq may very well have reflected the process of groupthink. There were rather unrealistic plans that supported this particular operation. Once initiated, there was again a refusal to shift course. Plus, there was a great deal of behavior aimed at misleading the public. Groupthink is a real process. This is sort of an interesting cartoon. If you're having some difficulty making it out right here, again, the higher up, the CEO, is stating that we're firmly opposed to any type of groupthink. And everybody responds, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir. Or this cartoon. Notice, we need more dissenting opinions. Absolutely, sir. Well, we agree 100%. Lippmann made this interesting observation that I think fits to a degree with groupthink. And perhaps some of you have seen the film or the play The Crucible, all based upon the witchcraft hysteria that swept through Salem Village in the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the late 1600s. Again, I really think, and I'm going along again with the observation of other social scientists, you can make a case for this also illustrating groupthink. So, in the end, are there ways by which and through which we can avoid groupthink? Well, first and foremost, inform group members of the causes and the consequences of groupthink. Furthermore, researchers who are familiar with this process argue that people within the groups ought to work to be impartial. Don't, again, go along or necessarily endorse just one position. Ask everyone to critically analyze any notions or ideas that come out of a group interaction. From time to time, subdivide the group and have these subgroups meet separately and then come back together to share their differences and their ideas. And after reaching a preliminary decision, ask for a sort of a second or even a third meeting. Push members to express their notions and their ideas. Maybe even assign one member within the group to serve as a devil's advocate, to shoot holes in any of the arguments or the approaches that the group has developed. Invite outside experts to attend meetings on a differential basis. By that I mean on a staggered basis, so to speak. And work very hard to encourage group members to share their insights and their ideas. More often than not, when groupthink occurs, there's this notion we've got to keep it in-house. If we share it outside, we're really, again, devaluating our position and doing wrong by our group members. Groupthink doesn't occur at the highest levels. It's very, very important that you remember that. I suspect if you're, again, will reflect on your life, you will find instances, just like I have, of small group experiences with this process known as groupthink. Next time, we'll investigate another important process, one discovered by Stanley Milgram in his famous experiments on obedience.